While I was celebrating my biggest business achievement at the company gala, my husband Marcus was maxing out every credit card in my wallet for his secret girlfriend. What he didn't know was that I had a black card with no spending limit, one that would become his worst nightmare when I discovered the truth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the ballroom as I adjusted my emerald green evening gown, smoothing the silk fabric one final time before stepping into what should have been the most triumphant night of my career. The annual Tech Innovation Awards ceremony was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Chicago, and tonight, my cybersecurity firm Digital Fortress Solutions was being honored as Emerging Company of the Year. At 34, I had built my company from a one-woman operation working out of our Lincoln Park apartment to a thriving firm with 18 employees and clients across the Midwest. The recognition felt surreal, validating every late night, every rejected pitch, every moment I doubted whether leaving my corporate job 5 years ago had been the right decision. "You look absolutely stunning, Claire," Marcus said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. His charcoal gray tuxedo was impeccably tailored, his sandy brown hair perfectly styled, and his smile carried that same boyish charm that had captivated me 8 years ago when we'd met at Northwestern University's alumni mixer. I accepted the champagne, noting how his blue eyes seemed to sparkle with what I interpreted as pride. "Thank you for being here tonight," I said, meaning it deeply. "I know these industry events aren't exactly your thing." Marcus worked as a senior account manager at Meridian Financial Partners, specializing in wealth management for high-net-worth individuals. While he understood business success, the tech world had always seemed foreign to him. His presence tonight felt like validation that he truly supported my entrepreneurial journey. "Are you kidding?" he replied, his hand finding the small of my back. "My wife is being honored as one of Chicago's most innovative business leaders. I wouldn't miss this for the world." The ballroom buzzed with conversation as Chicago's tech elite mingled over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. I recognized several potential clients, a few competitors I respected, and numerous industry influencers whose presence could open doors for Digital Fortress Solutions. This wasn't just an awards ceremony, it was a networking goldmine. Claire Sullivan, the voice belonged to David Chen, CEO of Titan Enterprises, one of the largest fintech companies in the region. His approach sent a thrill of anticipation through me. Titan had been on my target client list for over a year. "David, what a pleasant surprise," I said, extending my hand with professional warmth. "Congratulations on tonight's recognition," David continued, his handshake firm and confident. "I've been following Digital Fortress Solutions with great interest. Your work on the healthcare network security project caught our attention. We've been looking for exactly the kind of innovative approach your team provides." My pulse quickened. The healthcare project had been a challenging but ultimately successful engagement that had showcased our ability to handle complex, multi-layered security implementations. If Titan was interested, it could represent the largest contract in my company's history. "I'd love to discuss how we might collaborate," I replied, keeping my voice professional despite my excitement. "Our team specializes in creating customized security solutions that scale with business growth." "Perfect. Let's schedule a meeting next week. I'll have my assistant reach out Monday morning." As David moved on to mingle with other attendees, I felt Marcus's hand tighten slightly on my waist. "That sounded promising," he said, though something in his tone seemed strained. "More than promising," I whispered back. "Titan could be the breakthrough contract that takes us to the next level. We're talking about potentially tripling our annual revenue." The evening progressed like a dream. During the awards presentation, I walked across the stage to accept the crystal trophy, delivering what I hoped was a gracious and inspiring acceptance speech. In the audience, Marcus applauded enthusiastically, his smile broad and seemingly genuine. "This recognition belongs not just to me, but to my incredible team at Digital Fortress Solutions," I said into the microphone, the spotlight warming my face. "Innovation happens when passionate people are given the freedom to solve complex problems creatively. Tonight represents not an endpoint, but a launching pad for even greater achievements ahead." The applause was thunderous, and as I returned to my table, several other attendees stopped to congratulate me personally. Business cards were exchanged, future meetings proposed, and potential partnerships discussed. By the time dessert was served, I had collected enough leads to keep our sales pipeline full for months. "You're absolutely glowing," Marcus observed as we finally settled back at our table. "This night has been incredible for you." "For us," I corrected, reaching for his hand across the white linen tablecloth. "Your support has been everything, Marcus. I know my crazy hours and constant travel haven't been easy on our marriage." He squeezed my hand, but I noticed his smile seemed to falter for just a moment before returning to full brightness. "You've worked so hard for this, Claire. You deserve every bit of success coming your way." The band began playing jazz standards as couples moved to the dance floor. Marcus stood and extended his hand with theatrical gallantry. "Mrs. Sullivan, would you honor me with a dance?" I laughed, accepting his invitation. On the dance floor, he spun me gracefully, my gown flowing around us as we moved to the music. Other couples smiled at us approvingly. We looked, I was certain, like the picture of success and happiness. "I have something I need to tell you," Marcus said quietly as we swayed to a slower song. My stomach tightened with sudden anxiety. "What is it?" "The Peterson account I've been working on. It finally closed today. The commission is going to be substantial, enough to finally book that European vacation we've been talking about." Relief flooded through me, followed by genuine excitement. "Marcus, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. I was thinking we could leave next month, maybe spend 2 weeks touring Italy and France. You've been working non-stop, and with this award recognition, it might be the perfect time to take a real break." The suggestion was appealing. Between building the business and maintaining our social obligations, Marcus and I hadn't taken a proper vacation in over 2 years. The idea of disconnecting completely, exploring European cities, and reconnecting as a couple felt exactly like what our marriage needed. "I'd love that," I said sincerely. "Let me check with my team about coverage for client obligations, but yes, let's plan something amazing." As the evening wound down, we said our goodbyes to industry colleagues and potential clients. In the hotel's marble lobby, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The award recognition would elevate Digital Fortress Solutions' profile significantly, the networking opportunities could translate into substantial new business, and Marcus seemed genuinely excited about celebrating our combined success with a romantic getaway. The ride home in our Uber was quiet, but comfortable. I leaned against Marcus's shoulder, mentally replaying the evening's highlights, while already beginning to plan follow-up strategies for the business leads I generated. "Tired?" he asked softly, his fingers running through my hair. "Pleasantly exhausted," I replied. "Tonight felt like a turning point, you know? Like everything we've been working toward is finally starting to come together. I'm so proud of you, Claire. You've built something really special." His words warmed me, reinforcing the feeling that our partnership, both personal and professional support, was stronger than ever. We'd weathered the challenges of my entrepreneurial journey together, and now we were positioned to enjoy the rewards together as well. Back at our Lincoln Park townhouse, I carefully hung my gown in the closet, while Marcus changed into casual clothes. The house felt particularly welcoming after the formal grandeur of the hotel, our sanctuary where we could finally relax and be ourselves. "Nightcap?" Marcus suggested, heading toward the kitchen. "Perfect idea," I agreed, settling onto our living room sofa and finally removing my heels with a grateful sigh. He returned with 2 glasses of wine and sat beside me, raising his glass in a toast. "To Claire Sullivan, Tech Innovator of the Year, and to the incredible future ahead of us." We clinked glasses, and I felt a deep contentment settle over me. Everything in my life seemed to be aligning perfectly. My business was thriving and gaining recognition, my marriage felt solid and supportive, and our financial future looked brighter than ever. "I love you, Marcus," I said simply, meaning it completely. "I love you too, Claire, more than you know." That night, as I drifted off to sleep with the Crystal Award visible on my dresser, I felt profoundly grateful for the life we'd built together. My business success was opening doors I'd only dreamed of. Marcus seemed genuinely proud and supportive, and our plans for the future felt both exciting and achievable. I had no way of knowing that while I'd been accepting congratulations and networking with industry leaders, Marcus had been systematically destroying our financial security with a series of credit card transactions that would shatter everything I believed about our marriage and our future together. The perfect evening that should have launched us into our best chapter together was actually the night everything began to unravel, though I wouldn't discover the truth for another 3 weeks. 3 weeks during which I would continue believing in the fairy tale, while Marcus continued living a double life that was about to collide catastrophically with reality. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The soft ping of my phone alarm pulled me from deep sleep at 6:30 a.m. Sunlight streamed through our bedroom's sheer curtains, and for a moment, I lay still, savoring the lingering satisfaction from the previous night's triumph. The Crystal Award caught the morning light from my dresser, a tangible reminder that everything I'd worked for was finally paying off. Marcus was already gone, not unusual for him since his gym routine started at 6 a.m. sharp every weekday. His side of the bed was neatly made, and I could smell the faint aroma of coffee drifting up from the kitchen, indicating he'd set the timer on our coffee maker before leaving. I stretched luxuriously, my body still slightly sore from dancing in heels for hours, then reached for my phone to check the flood of congratulatory messages I expected to find. LinkedIn notifications filled my screen, dozens of connection requests, comments on the photos from last night's ceremony, and messages from potential clients wanting to schedule meetings. Digital Fortress Solutions CEO Claire Sullivan accepts Emerging Company of the Year award, read the headline of a Tech Tribune article that someone had tagged me in. The accompanying photo showed me on stage, holding the crystal trophy with a confident smile. Seeing myself represented as a successful business leader still felt surreal, even after 5 years of building the company. My morning routine felt different that day, infused with a new energy and sense of possibility. In the shower, I mentally organized my priorities. Follow up with David Chen from Titan Enterprises, respond to the most promising LinkedIn messages, schedule meetings with my leadership team to discuss our growth strategy, and research European vacation destinations for the trip Marcus had suggested. Downstairs, I poured coffee into my favorite mug, a simple white ceramic piece with Boss Lady, printed in elegant script that my assistant Rebecca had given me for my last birthday. The kitchen felt particularly bright and welcoming, the morning sun highlighting the modern subway tile backsplash Marcus and I had installed together during our kitchen renovation 2 years ago. My laptop was already on the kitchen island where I'd left it, and I opened it to begin the day's work. The first email in my inbox was from David Chen's assistant, just as he'd promised. Ms. Sullivan, Mr. Chen would like to schedule a meeting to discuss potential collaboration between Titan Enterprises and Digital Fortress Solutions. Would Tuesday at 2 p.m. at our downtown office work for your schedule? Please let me know what materials you'd like to present, as Mr. Chen has already reviewed your portfolio and is very interested in moving forward quickly. I stared at the screen, hardly believing how fast things were moving. In the business world, quick follow-through usually indicated serious interest, but Titan's urgency suggested this could be even bigger than I'd initially imagined. Rebecca, I said into my phone as I dialed my assistant, I need you to clear my Tuesday afternoon and prepare the full capabilities presentation for Titan Enterprises. This could be the big one we've been working toward. Already on it, Rebecca replied with characteristic efficiency. I saw the news coverage from last night and figured you'd have some major follow-ups. Also, congratulations. The photos from the ceremony look amazing. After confirming details for the Titan meeting, I spent the next hour responding to the most promising business inquiries. A healthcare consortium in Milwaukee wanted to discuss security upgrades, a manufacturing company in Indianapolis needed consultation on protecting intellectual property, and a financial services firm right here in Chicago was interested in our penetration testing services. By 9 a.m., I had scheduled 4 potential client meetings for the following week and identified 3 promising partnership opportunities. The momentum from last night's recognition was already translating into concrete business opportunities. Marcus returned from the gym around 9:30, his hair damp from the shower at his fitness club, wearing the navy blue suit I'd helped him select for a client meeting he'd mentioned having today. Morning beautiful, he said, kissing my cheek as he headed for the coffee maker. How does it feel to wake up as an award-winning CEO? Surreal, I admitted, closing my laptop to give him my full attention, but also incredibly energizing. I've already scheduled 4 client meetings for next week, including one with Titan Enterprises. Titan? His eyebrows rose with what appeared to be impressed surprise. That's a major player. Their contract values must be substantial. Potentially game-changing for us, I confirmed. David Chen seemed genuinely interested in our approach, and his assistant followed up first thing this morning. Marcus poured his coffee, adding the precise amount of cream he preferred, then leaned against the counter facing me. That's incredible, Claire. I'm so proud of how far you've come. Something in his tone made me study his face more carefully. While his words were supportive, there was a tension around his eyes that seemed inconsistent with celebration of my success. Maybe he was nervous about his own client meeting today, I reasoned. How's your morning looking? I asked. You mentioned the Peterson account closed yesterday. Are there celebration plans at your office? Oh, you know how it is, he said with a casual wave. Financial services doesn't really do the big celebration thing like tech companies. It's more quietly professional. That seemed reasonable, though I realized I knew surprisingly little about the social culture at Meridian Financial Partners. In the 5 years since Marcus had joined the firm, I'd attended only 2 company events, a holiday party and a summer picnic, and both had felt rather formal and reserved compared to the collaborative, energetic atmosphere at tech industry gatherings. What time is your client meeting today? I asked, noting that he seemed to be moving with unusual urgency, checking his phone repeatedly. Early afternoon, he replied, glancing at his watch. Actually, I should head out soon. Want to review some account files before the meeting. On a Saturday? The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Marcus paused, his coffee mug halfway to his lips. Big account, he said after a moment. Some clients prefer weekend meetings when their own schedules are less hectic. This made sense logically, though something felt slightly off about his explanation. In my experience, high-net-worth individuals typically guarded their weekends jealously, preferring to conduct business during standard hours. But Marcus knew his industry better than I did, and successful relationship management often required accommodating client preferences. I'll probably be late tonight, he continued, setting down his mug and gathering his briefcase. Might grab dinner with the client to solidify the relationship. Of course, I replied, though a small voice in the back of my mind noted that this would be the 3rd weekend evening this month that Marcus had client dinners. Success in relationship-driven fields often required social engagement, I reminded myself. My own business frequently involved evening networking events and client entertainment. After Marcus left, I returned to my laptop and the growing list of follow-up tasks from the previous night. The house felt particularly quiet, but in a productive way that allowed me to focus completely on work. Around noon, I decided to take a break and check our personal finances, wanting to get a clear picture of our current position before discussing European vacation plans in detail. We'd always maintained separate business accounts, but shared personal banking, with both our names on our primary checking and savings accounts. I logged into our bank's website, using the password Marcus and I shared, for household financial management. Our checking account showed a healthy balance, reflecting our combined incomes and generally conservative spending habits. The savings account had grown nicely over the past few months, bolstered by my increased business profits, and what Marcus had described as a particularly strong quarter for his commission-based earnings. Next, I checked our shared credit cards to get a complete picture of our monthly obligations. We typically used credit cards for convenience and rewards points, paying them off in full each month to avoid interest charges, a financial discipline we'd both agreed on early in our marriage. The first card, our primary American Express, showed a balance of $3,247, mostly familiar charges. Groceries, gas, a few dinners out, my dress for last night's ceremony. Nothing unexpected there. The second card, a Visa we used mainly for travel and larger purchases, displayed a balance that made me blink twice, $14,892. I scrolled through the transaction history, my confusion deepening with each entry. Tiffany & Company, $2,847. Nordstrom, $1,653. Le Bernardin, $347. The Ritz-Carlton, $1,205. Hermes, $3,200. La Perla, $892. The charges were all from the past 3 weeks, all from high-end retailers and restaurants, but I recognized none of them. I hadn't shopped at Tiffany or Hermes recently, hadn't stayed at the Ritz-Carlton, and had never even heard of La Perla. My heart rate quickened as I continued scrolling. The pattern was unmistakable. Luxury purchases, expensive dinners, premium hotel stays, all at establishments I hadn't visited, for items I hadn't purchased. I reached for my phone to call Marcus, then hesitated. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe these were business expenses he'd charged to our personal card temporarily, planning to seek reimbursement from his company. Perhaps he'd been surprising me with gifts for our anniversary next month, though the amount seemed extreme even for special occasions. The third credit card's balance made my stomach drop, $22,156. This card was supposed to be for emergencies only, something we rarely used and paid off immediately when we did. But the transaction history showed a shopping spree that defied explanation. Agent Provocateur, $654. Cartier, $4,200. Four Seasons Spa, $890. Louis Vuitton, $2,350. I grabbed a notebook and began writing down the transactions, organizing them by date and merchant. The pattern that emerged was deeply troubling. Nearly $40,000 in luxury purchases over 3 weeks, all at stores and restaurants I'd never visited, all charged while I'd been working late or traveling for business. The purchases weren't random. They showed a clear preference for high-end women's fashion, jewelry, lingerie, and romantic dining experiences. This wasn't business entertainment or surprise gifts for me. This was someone else's expensive lifestyle being funded by our credit cards. My hands trembled slightly as I checked the fourth and final card, our MasterCard with the highest credit limit. The balance, $31,847, maxed out completely. Vintage wine purchases, $1,200. Spa treatments, $750. Designer handbags, $3,400. High-end restaurants I'd never heard of, $2,100. The charges painted a picture of someone living an extravagant lifestyle, someone who clearly wasn't me. I sat back in my kitchen chair, staring at the notebook filled with evidence of financial betrayal. Nearly $70,000 in credit card debt had been accumulated in 3 weeks, funding what appeared to be another woman's luxury lifestyle. The timing was particularly cruel. While I'd been celebrating my biggest professional achievement, Marcus had been maxing out our credit cards for someone else. The morning's triumph felt distant now, overshadowed by the growing realization that my marriage might be as fraudulent as these mysterious charges. But I needed more information before confronting Marcus, needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. I reached for my laptop, pulling up the credit card websites to examine the charges in greater detail. Each transaction included timestamps and merchant information that would help me piece together exactly what had been happening while I'd been building my business and trusting my husband. The investigation was just beginning, but already I knew that everything I'd believed about my marriage was about to change forever. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my kitchen table as I transformed into a digital detective, my laptop surrounded by printed credit card statements, a legal pad filled with transaction details, and my phone ready to make investigative calls. What had started as a routine financial check had become a forensic accounting project that was revealing the systematic destruction of our financial security. I began with the merchant addresses, using Google Maps to plot the locations of each suspicious purchase. A disturbing pattern emerged immediately. All the high-end retailers were clustered in specific areas of Chicago and Milwaukee, with a concentration around the Gold Coast and a surprising number in the affluent Milwaukee suburb of Wauwatosa, Milwaukee. Marcus had mentioned several business trips to Milwaukee over the past few months, claiming he was developing relationships with potential high-net-worth clients in Wisconsin's financial hub. I never questioned these trips, assuming they were legitimate business development efforts that could benefit his career. The Hermes store on North Michigan Avenue had processed a $3,200 transaction on Thursday afternoon, the same day Marcus had told me he was in back-to-back meetings at his office. I called the store directly, adopting my most professional tone. "This is Claire Sullivan. I'm calling to inquire about a purchase made on my credit card Thursday afternoon. There seems to be some confusion about the transaction. Of course, Miss Sullivan. Let me pull up that purchase. Yes, I see the transaction. A beautiful Birkin bag in cognac leather, purchased by a young woman with blonde hair. She mentioned it was a gift from her fiancé. Lovely couple. He'd called ahead to ensure we had the exact style she wanted. My blood turned to ice. Did you happen to get the buyer's name? I'm sorry, but I can't share customer information beyond what's related to your payment method. Is there an issue with the charge? No, thank you. That clears things up. I ended the call, my hands shaking as I made notes. Marcus had pre-arranged a $3,200 handbag purchase for a blonde woman who'd referred to him as her fiancé. The Louis Vuitton purchase led to a similar conversation. A $2,350 transaction for a limited edition wallet and matching accessories set, again purchased by a young blonde woman who'd arrived with specific knowledge of what she wanted. The sales associate remembered her because she'd been, quote, so excited about her upcoming engagement party. Engagement party. The words echoed in my mind as I stared at my own wedding ring, the simple but elegant diamond solitaire Marcus had proposed with 6 years ago. While I'd been building my business and planning our future together, he'd apparently been planning an engagement to someone else. I pulled up our shared calendar on my phone, cross-referencing Marcus's, quote, business trips with the credit card charges. The correlation was perfect. Every expensive purchase coincided with days Marcus had told me he was traveling for work or attending client events I couldn't accompany him to. The restaurant charges told an even more intimate story of betrayal. Le Bernardin, one of Chicago's most romantic fine dining establishments. $347 for two on a Wednesday evening when Marcus had claimed to be at a mandatory company training session. Alinea, the Michelin 3-star restaurant that required reservations months in advance. $892 for their premium tasting menu for two, charged on the same night I'd been in Detroit, meeting with a potential client. I called Le Bernardin, again posing as someone verifying a charge. Yes, that was a lovely evening, the hostess confirmed after I provided the transaction details. The gentleman had requested our most romantic table, and they were celebrating an engagement. He'd even arranged for champagne service with the ring presentation. Very sweet couple. Ring presentation. I hung up feeling physically ill. Marcus had proposed to another woman at one of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants, using our credit card to pay for the experience, while I'd been in another city working to build our future. The jewelry store purchases painted an even clearer picture. Tiffany & Company had processed a $2,847 transaction for an engagement ring, not an elaborate one, but a classic solitaire similar to my own. Cartier had charged $4,200 for what their customer service described as engagement jewelry and matching accessories. Marcus hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been conducting a parallel relationship complete with proposals, engagement celebrations, and wedding planning. The luxury purchases weren't random indulgences. They were the financial foundation of an entirely separate life he'd been building with another woman. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. Client dinner running long. Don't wait up. Love you. The casual lies sent a surge of rage through me that was almost overwhelming. While he was texting loving messages to his wife, he was likely out with his fiancée, continuing to charge their romantic evening to our maxed-out credit cards. I needed more information. Opening my laptop, I began a systematic search of Marcus's social media accounts, something I'd never felt the need to do during our marriage. His Facebook profile was carefully curated. Photos of us together, professional achievements, innocuous posts about sports and current events. Nothing that would suggest anything inappropriate. Fama Halid. His Instagram account told a different story. While the posts were similarly innocent, his tagged photos revealed glimpses of another life. In the background of a photo posted by someone named @Brad_Milwaukee, I could see Marcus at what appeared to be an upscale bar, his arm around a petite blonde woman in an expensive dress. The caption read, "Great night celebrating the happy couple. Can't wait for the wedding." The wedding. My husband was apparently planning to marry someone else while still married to me. The legal implications alone were staggering. But the emotional devastation was even worse. Every loving word, every shared dream, every intimate moment had been a lie while he'd been building a genuine relationship with another woman. I screenshot the photo and began following the social media trail. @Brad_Milwaukee led me to @Jessica_Marie_W, whose Instagram account was a treasure trove of evidence. Photos of expensive dinners at restaurants I recognized from our credit card statements. Pictures of designer handbags and jewelry that matched the mysterious purchases. And dozens of photos with Marcus, tagged with captions like "my amazing fiancé" and "can't wait to be Mrs. Sullivan." Mrs. Sullivan. She was planning to take my name. Jessica's bio listed her as a, quote, brand manager and lifestyle influencer in Milwaukee, with nearly 15,000 followers who seemed genuinely engaged with her content about luxury fashion, fine dining, and travel. Her posts painted the picture of a sophisticated young woman living an enviable lifestyle, a lifestyle that was apparently being funded entirely by my credit cards. I scrolled through months of posts, watching the progression of their relationship unfold in real time. Their first appearance together was from 5 months ago, a casual dinner photo captioned, "New city, new adventures." The posts gradually became more romantic, more expensive, more committed. A photo from 3 weeks ago showed her left hand prominently displaying an engagement ring, with the caption, "He asked, and I said yes. Planning the most beautiful wedding for this fall." Fall. They were planning to marry in just a few months. The hotel charges began making sense as I connected them to Jessica's travel posts. The Ritz-Carlton charges corresponded to a romantic weekend getaway she documented extensively, hashtagging #engagement celebration and #future MRS. The Four Seasons spa charges matched her stories about quote pre-wedding pampering and getting ready for the big day. I felt like I was watching my marriage dissolve in real time through another woman's Instagram account. Every charge on our credit cards represented a moment of intimacy and commitment that Marcus was sharing with someone else, while maintaining the fiction of our relationship. The financial damage was staggering, but the emotional betrayal cut even deeper. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a midlife crisis affair. This was a methodical, calculated deception that had been going on for months, possibly longer. Marcus had been living 2 complete lives, devoted husband by day in Chicago, loving fiancé by night in Milwaukee. My phone rang, interrupting my investigation. The caller ID showed my best friend Sarah Chen, David Chen's younger sister and my closest confidant since college. "Claire, I just saw the news coverage from last night. Congratulations on the award. You looked absolutely radiant." "Thank you," I managed, my voice sounding hollow even to myself. "Are you okay? You sound strange." Sarah had an uncanny ability to read my emotional state. Even over the phone, we'd been friends for 12 years, had been each other's maid of honor, and had supported each other through every major life event. If anyone would understand the magnitude of what I'd discovered, it would be Sarah. "Actually, I'm not okay. Can you come over? I need someone I trust, and I can't talk about this over the phone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While waiting for Sarah, I continued documenting evidence, taking screenshots of Jessica's social media posts and printing additional credit card statements. I organized everything chronologically, creating a timeline that showed the evolution of Marcus's double life alongside the escalation of fraudulent charges. The doorbell rang exactly 20 minutes later. Sarah stood on my doorstep with a bottle of wine and a concerned expression, her long black hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, wearing the jeans and Northwestern University sweatshirt that was her weekend uniform. "What's going on?" she asked immediately, noting the serious expression on my face. I led her to the kitchen table, where the evidence was spread out like a prosecutor's case file. "Marcus has been living a double life. He's engaged to another woman, and he's been using our credit cards to fund their entire relationship." Sarah's eyes widened as I walked her through the discoveries, the credit card charges, the merchant confirmations, the social media evidence, the engagement ring purchases. She listened without interruption, her expression growing more shocked and angry with each revelation. "Claire, this is beyond an affair. This is systematic fraud, and what looks like bigamy planning." I know, I said quietly. I just don't know what to do next. Do I confront him? Do I call a lawyer? Do I report the credit card fraud? Sarah studied the evidence carefully, her analytical mind. She worked as a forensic accountant, processing the financial implications. You need to protect yourself immediately. This level of deception suggests he's capable of much worse. Have you checked your other accounts? Not yet. I was so shocked by the credit card discoveries that I haven't looked at anything else. Let's check everything right now, Sarah said grimly. If he's been this brazen with credit cards, there might be other financial surprises you haven't found yet. As we prepared to dig deeper into our financial accounts, I realized that what I'd discovered so far might only be the beginning. The man I'd married was a stranger, and the life I'd thought we were building together was built on lies. The question now wasn't whether our marriage was over, but how much more damage Marcus had done that I hadn't yet discovered. Sarah's forensic training kicked into high gear as we settled in front of my laptop, armed with coffee and the grim determination to uncover the full extent of Marcus's financial deception. Her methodical approach was exactly what I needed. While my emotions threatened to overwhelm me, her analytical mind could navigate the complex financial web we were about to untangle. Let's start with your business accounts, Sarah suggested, pulling up a notepad to track our findings. If he's been this brazen with personal credit cards, he might have tried to access business lines of credit or corporate accounts. I logged into Digital Fortress Solutions banking portal, my heart racing as the main dashboard loaded. My business checking account showed the expected balance, healthy and reflecting the recent influx of deposits from new clients attracted by last night's award recognition. The business savings account was similarly untouched, containing the emergency fund I'd built up over 5 years of careful financial management. Business credit line? Sarah asked, noting my relief. I clicked through to the business credit accounts. My $100,000 line of credit showed zero balance, exactly as it should. This account required my signature for any withdrawals, and the bank had my personal cell phone listed for transaction confirmations. Marcus had never had access to these accounts, a boundary I'd maintained from the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. Smart that you kept business and personal completely separate, Sarah observed. Now let's check your personal banking. Our joint checking account appeared normal at first glance, but Sarah immediately noticed something I'd missed. Look at the deposit patterns from Marcus's income. Compare the last 3 months to the previous 6 months. I pulled up historical statements, and the discrepancy became obvious. Marcus's regular deposits from Meridian Financial Partners had decreased by nearly 40% over the past 3 months, despite his claims of having his best quarter ever. The Peterson account commission he'd mentioned celebrating yesterday was nowhere to be found. Either he's lying about his recent success or he's depositing his income somewhere else, Sarah concluded grimly. We checked our joint savings account next. The balance was significantly lower than I'd expected, nearly $15,000 less than what I'd calculated based on our recent deposits and expenses. A review of the transaction history revealed a series of transfers to external accounts I didn't recognize, all initiated with electronic signatures that appeared to be Marcus's. He's been slowly draining your savings while maxing out your credit cards, Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. This isn't impulsive spending. This is systematic financial abuse. The mortgage account revealed another disturbing surprise. Marcus had initiated a home equity line of credit application 2 weeks ago, listing himself as the primary applicant and me as a co-signer. The application was still pending, but if approved, it would give him access to another $125,000 based on our home's current value. We need to stop this immediately, I said, reaching for my phone. If that line of credit gets approved... Wait, Sarah interrupted. Let's gather all the evidence first. We're going to need a complete picture before you take any action that might tip him off. She was right. If Marcus realized I'd discovered his deception, he might accelerate his timeline or take more drastic measures to access our remaining assets. I needed to understand the full scope before making any moves that could alert him. Pav. My personal credit report revealed additional shocks. Marcus had applied for 3 new credit cards in my name over the past month, using my social security number and forged signatures. 2 applications had been denied due to our suddenly elevated debt-to-income ratio, but 1 had been approved. A premium rewards card with a $50,000 limit that was already 60% utilized. He's committed identity theft, Sarah stated flatly. This isn't just marital misconduct. These are federal crimes. The investment accounts told an even more devastating story. Our joint retirement account, built up over 6 years of marriage, had been liquidated completely. The $180,000 we'd accumulated through careful contributions and market growth was gone, transferred out in 3 large transactions over the past month. The early withdrawal penalties alone would cost us tens of thousands in taxes and fees. When did these transfers happen? Sarah asked, cross-referencing the dates with my travel calendar. I was in Detroit for client meetings this week, San Francisco 2 weeks ago for a conference, and Boston 3 weeks ago for the cybersecurity summit. Each major withdrawal had occurred while I was traveling for business. When Marcus knew I'd be too busy to monitor our accounts, the systematic nature of his deception was becoming clear. This wasn't opportunistic fraud. It was a carefully planned financial heist that had been months in the making. Marcus had been strategically timing his actions to coincide with my business travel, using my professional success and busy schedule to mask his theft. Claire, we need to check one more thing, Sarah said gravely. Life insurance policies. If he's been planning this level of deception, we need to know if there are any policies on your life that you didn't authorize. My blood ran cold. I hadn't even considered that possibility, but given everything else we'd discovered, it seemed entirely plausible. I logged into our insurance company's website, navigating to the policy management section. Our original life insurance policies were intact, modest coverage we'd purchased when we bought the house, with each other as beneficiaries. But there was a new entry that made my stomach drop. A $2 million term life policy on my life, taken out just 6 weeks ago, with Marcus as the sole beneficiary. I never signed anything for this, I whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. Sarah leaned over to examine the policy details. Look at the application signature. It's a digital signature, probably forged using software. And look at the medical exam requirement. It shows as, quote, waived due to applicant's young age and excellent health history. The implications were terrifying. Marcus hadn't just been stealing our existing assets. He'd been setting up financial gain from my potential death. Combined with his engagement to another woman and the complete liquidation of our joint assets, a horrifying picture was emerging of a man who viewed me as nothing more than an obstacle to his new life. We need professional help right now, Sarah declared, pulling out her phone. I'm calling my brother David, not just because he's family, but because Titan Enterprises has an excellent legal department that handles white-collar crime cases. And we need to contact the police. The police? The reality of involving law enforcement made everything feel overwhelmingly real. Claire, this is identity theft, fraud, forgery, and potentially conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. These aren't civil matters anymore. They're crimes. And given the life insurance policy, we need to consider that you might be in physical danger. While Sarah made calls to set up emergency legal consultation, I continued documenting evidence, taking screenshots of every fraudulent account and unauthorized transaction. The scope of Marcus's deception was staggering. Nearly $250,000 stolen or fraudulently charged across credit cards, savings, retirement accounts, and forged applications. But underneath the shock and fear, I felt something else beginning to emerge. A cold, calculating anger. Marcus had systematically destroyed our financial security while I'd been working tirelessly to build my business. He'd stolen my identity, forged my signature, and apparently planned to benefit from my death. But he'd made one crucial miscalculation. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, moving past Marcus's side of the closet to my jewelry box. Hidden in a secret compartment my grandmother had shown me years ago was something Marcus had never known about. A black American Express Centurion card. The card had been issued to me 3 years ago, when Digital Fortress Solutions reached a certain revenue threshold. Unlike regular credit cards, the Centurion card had no preset spending limit. Its purchasing power was based on my payment history and financial profile. I'd never mentioned it to Marcus, keeping it as a personal emergency fund that only I could access. More importantly, the account statements went to my business address, not our home, and the card was connected to a checking account Marcus had never known existed. While he'd been systematically destroying our shared financial life, I'd maintained a completely separate financial identity that could fund whatever I needed to do next. Downstairs, Sarah was finishing her calls with a satisfied expression. David is sending their corporate attorney to meet with us tomorrow morning. His name is Jonathan Pierce, and he specializes in financial fraud cases. David says he's the best in the city for this type of situation. What about the police? I've contacted the Financial Crimes Division. Detective Lisa Martinez will be here Monday morning to take a formal statement and begin the criminal investigation. She said cases like this often involve organized fraud rings, so they'll investigate whether Marcus has other victims. I showed Sarah the black card, explaining its unlimited access and secret account. Her expression shifted from concern to something approaching satisfaction. So while Marcus thinks he's destroyed your financial security, you actually have unlimited purchasing power that he doesn't know about? Exactly. And the account has been building value for 3 years. Between the card access and my business assets, I'm probably in a stronger financial position than Marcus realizes. Good, Sarah said firmly, because you're going to need resources for the legal battle ahead. And Claire, there's something else we need to discuss. You can't stay in this house. If Marcus is as desperate as this evidence suggests, and especially given that life insurance policy, you need to be somewhere safe until he's arrested. The thought of leaving my home, the space I'd thought of as our sanctuary, was painful, but Sarah was right. The man who'd been sharing my bed was a stranger capable of systematic fraud and potentially worse. I couldn't predict what he might do if he discovered I'd uncovered his deception. I'll pack a bag, I said, already mentally cataloging what I'd need for an extended stay away from home. Do you think your guest room is available? Absolutely, but first, we need to secure all this evidence and make sure Marcus can't access any accounts or assets when he comes home tonight. As evening approached, we finalized our emergency plan, secure all evidence, change passwords on every account I controlled, place fraud alerts with credit bureaus, pack essential items, and disappear before Marcus returned from his supposed client dinner. By Monday, I'd have legal representation and law enforcement working to protect me from the man I'd married. The black card felt heavy in my wallet as we prepared to leave, not just because of its physical weight, but because it represented something Marcus had never understood about me. He'd seen me as a resource to be exploited, a financial opportunity to be maximized. He'd never realized that the woman he was betraying had built her own empire, one he couldn't touch or destroy. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. Pyre, pyre, pyre. Sunday morning arrived with an autumn chill that matched my emotional state perfectly. I'd barely slept in Sarah's guest room, my mind racing between disbelief, rage, and strategic planning. The comfortable bed felt foreign after years of sharing space with Marcus, and every small sound in the unfamiliar house had jolted me awake throughout the night. Sarah knocked softly on the guest room door at 8 a.m., carrying a steaming mug of coffee, and wearing the concerned expression that had become her default since yesterday's discoveries. "How are you holding up?" she asked, settling into the reading chair by the window. "I feel like I'm living in someone else's nightmare," I admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Part of me keeps thinking I'll wake up and discover this was all some horrible mistake. "The documentation doesn't lie," Sarah replied gently but firmly. "We have bank statements, credit card records, forged signatures, and social media evidence. This is real, Claire, and today we start fighting back." My phone had been buzzing intermittently since 6 a.m., with texts from Marcus, each message escalating in confusion and concern about my absence from our home. 7:15 a.m. "Where are you? Your car's not here and you didn't leave a note." 7:43 a.m. "Claire, I'm worried. Please call me. Did something happen?" 8:02 a.m. "I've called your office and Rebecca hasn't heard from you. Are you okay?" 8:18 a.m. "I'm about to call hospitals if you don't respond. This isn't like you." The messages revealed an interesting psychological profile. Marcus was genuinely panicked about my disappearance, suggesting he hadn't expected me to discover his deception so quickly. His references to hospitals and emergencies indicated he was considering scenarios that might explain my absence, but financial fraud detection clearly wasn't among them. "Should I respond?" I asked Sarah, showing her the increasingly frantic messages. "Not yet. Let him worry for a few more hours. Jonathan Pierce wants to coach you on communication strategy before you have any contact with Marcus. We don't want to say anything that could compromise the criminal case. At 10 a.m., we drove to downtown Chicago for our emergency meeting with Jonathan Pierce at Titan Enterprises corporate offices. The sleek glass building represented everything I'd been working toward in my business career, and under different circumstances, visiting as a potential client would have been exciting. Instead, I was here seeking legal protection from my own husband. Jonathan Pierce turned out to be a sharp-eyed man in his early 50s, impeccably dressed and carrying an aura of quiet competence that immediately inspired confidence. His corner office overlooked Lake Michigan, with law degrees from Harvard and Northwestern prominently displayed alongside photos of what appeared to be his own family. "Ms. Sullivan," he began after Sarah had made introductions, "David Chin briefed me on your situation yesterday evening. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence Sarah shared, and I want you to know that we're taking this extremely seriously. What your husband has done constitutes multiple felonies under both state and federal law." I handed him the folder containing all our documented evidence: credit card statements, bank records, social media screenshots, insurance policy information, and the timeline Sarah and I had constructed showing the systematic nature of Marcus's theft. Jonathan reviewed the materials methodically, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. His expression grew increasingly grave as he absorbed the full scope of the deception. "The life insurance policy is particularly concerning," he said finally. "Combined with the systematic asset liquidation and identity theft, it suggests premeditation for what could be classified as conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Have you noticed any changes in your husband's behavior that might indicate escalation?" I thought back over the past few months, searching for signs I'd missed. "He's been encouraging me to travel more for business, even suggesting I take on projects that would require extended time away from Chicago. Last month, he urged me to consider a consulting contract in Singapore that would have had me overseas for 6 weeks. And during your business travel is when most of the fraudulent transactions occurred," Sarah added, consulting her notes. Jonathan nodded grimly. "This pattern suggests he was not only timing his theft to coincide with your absence, but potentially creating opportunities for you to be away during critical phases of his plan." The implications sent a chill through me. Marcus hadn't just been stealing our assets. He'd been manipulating my professional life to facilitate his crimes and possibly to create opportunities for whatever he'd planned next. "What's our immediate priority?" I asked, needing to focus on action rather than dwelling on the terrifying possibilities. "Asset protection first," Jonathan replied decisively. "We need to freeze all accounts he has access to, cancel the pending home equity application, and secure your business assets. Then we coordinate with law enforcement to build the criminal case." He pulled out his phone and began making calls to various financial institutions, speaking in the authoritative legal language that carried immediate weight with bank managers and credit department supervisors. Within an hour, he'd frozen our joint accounts, canceled Marcus's access to shared credit cards, and placed fraud alerts that would prevent any new applications using my personal information. "The home equity line of credit has been withdrawn and flagged for fraudulent application," Jonathan reported, after a particularly lengthy call. "The bank is launching their own internal investigation of your husband's activities." During lunch at a private dining room in Titan's offices, Detective Lisa Martinez arrived to begin the official criminal investigation. A compact woman with intelligent dark eyes and an air of professional competence, she immediately commanded respect through her thorough understanding of white-collar crime patterns. "Cases like this are more common than people realize," Detective Martinez explained as she set up a digital recorder for my formal statement. "What makes your situation particularly serious is the sophistication and the apparent planning toward insurance fraud. We'll be coordinating with federal authorities since the crimes cross state lines." I spent 2 hours providing detailed testimony about the timeline of discoveries, Marcus's travel patterns, his lies about business success, and the evidence we'd gathered. Detective Martinez asked precise questions that helped clarify legal elements needed for prosecution. "The social media evidence showing his engagement to another woman while married to you will be crucial for establishing motive," she noted. "We'll be obtaining warrants for his electronic communications and financial records, I expect we'll find evidence of additional victims and possibly a larger fraud network. Additional victims? The thought hadn't occurred to me that Marcus might be targeting other women. Men who commit this level of systematic fraud rarely limit themselves to one victim, Detective Martinez explained. The techniques he's used, identity theft, forged signatures, emotional manipulation combined with financial exploitation, these are skills that suggest experience with similar crimes. The meeting concluded with a comprehensive protection plan. I would remain at Sarah's house under informal protection while warrants were prepared. Jonathan would handle all financial institution communications to prevent further unauthorized access, and Detective Martinez would coordinate the multi-jurisdictional investigation. As we prepared to leave Titan's offices, my phone rang with a call from Marcus. Jonathan nodded, indicating I should answer while he listened on speaker. "Claire, thank God!" Marcus's voice was strained with apparent panic. "Where are you? I've been worried sick. I called your parents, your sister, even checked with hospitals. What's going on?" "I'm fine, Marcus," I replied, following Jonathan's coaching to keep my response neutral and brief. "Fine. You disappear without a word, and you're fine? Claire, this isn't like you. Did something happen? Are you angry about something?" The genuine confusion in his voice was almost convincing. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed his concern was authentic, rather than panic about his schemes being discovered. "I needed some space to think," I said carefully. "I've discovered some things about our finances that concern me." A long pause followed, and when Marcus spoke again, his tone had shifted subtly. "What kind of things? Claire, if this is about the credit card balances, I can explain everything. I've been managing some temporary cash flow issues." "We need to talk," I interrupted, "but not over the phone. I'll be home tomorrow evening." "Tomorrow evening?" "Claire, whatever you think you've found, we can clear this up right now. I love you, and I would never do anything to hurt you or hurt us." The words that should have been comforting now sounded like calculated manipulation. After seeing evidence of his engagement to Jessica, his loving declarations felt like scripted performances designed to maintain control over his dual life. "Tomorrow, Marcus. We'll talk tomorrow." After ending the call, Jonathan reviewed the conversation with professional satisfaction. "Perfect. That gives us 24 hours to finalize the legal protections and coordinate with law enforcement. Detective Martinez, will you be ready to move by tomorrow evening?" "Absolutely. We should have warrants by tomorrow afternoon and backup units positioned before Miss Sullivan arrives home." If he's as desperate as the evidence suggests, tomorrow's confrontation could provoke him to make additional incriminating statements or actions. As we left downtown Chicago, I felt a strange mixture of dread and anticipation about the following day's confrontation. For months, Marcus had been living two lives, manipulating me while building a future with another woman. Tomorrow those parallel worlds would collide, and one of them would be destroyed forever. The black card in my wallet felt like a talisman of the strength I'd built independently of Marcus. While he'd been systematically stealing our shared assets, I'd been creating my own financial security that he couldn't touch. Tomorrow, when I confronted him with the evidence of his betrayal, I'd be doing so from a position of power he'd never suspected I possessed. The man who thought he'd been playing me for a fool was about to discover that his victim had been 3 steps ahead of him all along. Monday evening arrived with the kind of crisp October air that usually energized me, but tonight it felt heavy with anticipation and dread. I sat in Sarah's car across the street from my own house, watching the warm light spill from the windows of what had once been my sanctuary. Detective Martinez's unmarked vehicle was positioned 2 blocks away, with backup units strategically placed throughout the neighborhood. "You don't have to do this," Sarah said for the 3rd time, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Jonathan could handle the confrontation with police present from the start. "No," I replied, checking my phone one more time to ensure the recording app was ready. "I need to hear him try to explain this. I need to look him in the eye and understand how someone I loved could do this to me." The wire I wore under my sweater felt foreign against my skin, but Detective Martinez had insisted on recording the conversation for evidence. Whatever Marcus said in the next hour could determine the strength of the criminal case against him. At exactly 7 p.m., I walked up the front steps of my own home, my key feeling strange in the lock. The house smelled like takeout Thai food, Marcus's preferred stress meal, and I could hear jazz music playing softly from the living room. He'd clearly been trying to create a welcoming atmosphere for our discussion. "Claire!" Marcus appeared in the hallway immediately, as if he'd been watching for my arrival. His relief looked genuine, but I now knew how skilled he was at performing emotions he didn't feel. "Thank God you're home. I've been going crazy with worry." He moved to embrace me, but I stepped back, maintaining physical distance that immediately registered in his expression. His smile faltered slightly as he studied my face, clearly sensing something had fundamentally changed. "We need to talk," I said simply, walking past him toward the living room. The space looked exactly as I'd left it Saturday morning, but everything felt different now. The photos of our travels together, the artwork we'd selected as a couple, the furniture we'd chosen for our shared life, all of it felt like props in an elaborate stage set designed to maintain his deception. "Claire, you're scaring me," Marcus said, settling onto the sofa, where we'd shared countless evenings watching movies and planning our future. "What's this about? You mentioned finances on the phone, but I don't understand what could have upset you so much." I pulled out my laptop and opened it to the credit card statements I'd organized. The numbers glowed on the screen like accusations. $69,847 in fraudulent charges across 4 cards, all maxed out, all funding another woman's lifestyle. These charges, Marcus. Nearly $70,000 in 3 weeks, all at stores I've never visited, restaurants I've never been to, hotels I've never stayed at. I turned the laptop toward him, watching his face carefully. "I need you to explain what this is." For a moment, Marcus looked genuinely confused, leaning forward to examine the screen with what appeared to be sincere bewilderment. But then something shifted in his expression, a subtle tightening around his eyes, a careful neutrality that replaced spontaneous emotion. "Oh," he said quietly, sitting back against the sofa cushions. "You found those." The admission hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. Hearing him acknowledge the charges made everything undeniably real in a way that seeing numbers on a screen hadn't quite achieved. "I found them?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Marcus, these are our credit cards. This is identity theft. This is fraud. And you say I found them like they were misplaced keys?" He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from our years together, but which now seemed calculated rather than genuine. "Claire, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Then explain it. Explain $70,000 in charges I didn't make. Explain Tiffany engagement rings and romantic dinners at restaurants I've never been to. Explain the home equity application you submitted without my knowledge." His face went pale at the mention of the home equity line, confirming that he hadn't expected me to discover that particular deception. "You've been busy," he said, his tone shifting from contrite to something harder. "I've been thorough," I corrected. The way someone should be when they discover their husband is systematically stealing from them. "But that's not even the worst part, is it, Marcus? Should I tell you what else I found, or do you want to confess it yourself?" A long silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the jazz music still playing in the background. Marcus seemed to be calculating something, weighing options in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of his professional demeanor when managing high-stakes client negotiations. "Jessica," he said finally, her name falling between us like a stone into still water. "Jessica Marie Williams," I confirmed, pulling up her Instagram account on my phone. "Your fiancé, the woman who's been planning your wedding for this fall while I've been building our business and planning our European vacation." Marcus's composure cracked visibly. "Claire, I never meant for it to happen this way. Jessica and we met during a client meeting in Milwaukee, and it just developed. But I never stopped loving you." The audacity of the lie was breathtaking. "You never stopped loving me? Marcus, you bought her an engagement ring with our credit card. You've been planning a wedding while married to me. You liquidated our retirement account to fund your new life with her." "The retirement account?" His surprise seemed genuine, suggesting that I'd discovered things faster than he'd anticipated. How did you find everything? Because I'm not the naive wife you apparently thought I was. I pulled up the bank statements showing the liquidated accounts, the forged credit applications, the insurance policy. I found it all, Marcus. Every lie, every theft, every crime you've committed. The word crime seemed to penetrate his defensive armor. Crime? Claire, these are marital issues. This is about relationships and mistakes, not crimes. Identity theft is a crime. Forgery is a crime. Taking out life insurance policies without consent is a crime. I watched his face carefully as I delivered the next blow. And conspiracy to commit insurance fraud is a federal crime, Marcus. The color drained from his face completely. Life insurance? What are you talking about? The $2 million policy you took out on my life 6 weeks ago, using a forged digital signature and listing yourself as the sole beneficiary. I leaned forward, studying his expression. Tell me, Marcus. What was the plan? How were you going to collect on that policy while maintaining your engagement to Jessica? I never. He started, then stopped, seeming to realize that denial was pointless. Claire, it's not what you think. Then what was it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been systematically destroying our marriage, stealing our assets, and setting up financial gain from my death. What exactly should I think? Marcus stood abruptly, beginning to pace the living room with agitated energy. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. My income at Meridian has been dropping, the Peterson account was a lie, and Jessica's father has been pushing me to prove I can provide for her properly. Edward Williams? I guessed, remembering the name from my social media investigation. He owns a series of investment firms in Milwaukee. When Jessica and I got serious, he made it clear that his approval depended on my financial status. I got in over my head trying to maintain the lifestyle he expected me to provide for his daughter. The confession revealed a different dimension to Marcus's deception. This wasn't just personal betrayal. It was financial fraud motivated by pressure from Jessica's wealthy family to prove his worthiness as a son-in-law. So you decided to steal from your wife to impress your girlfriend's father. The words tasted bitter as I spoke them. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Marcus said desperately. I thought I could replace the money before you noticed. The credit cards were supposed to be temporary, just until I closed some bigger deals. But then my commissions kept falling, and Edward kept raising the bar for what he expected Jessica's husband to provide. And the life insurance policy? Marcus stopped pacing, his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Edward suggested it. He said successful men always carry substantial life insurance for their wives' protection. He offered to help me with the premiums as a wedding gift. The pieces were falling into place in a way that was even more sinister than I'd imagined. This wasn't just Marcus's individual crime. It was a family operation, with Jessica's father orchestrating financial fraud that could potentially escalate to insurance fraud. Marcus, look at me, I said quietly. When he turned around, I saw something that might have been the real person underneath all the lies. Scared, weak, and completely out of his depth. Edward Williams isn't trying to help you. He's using you to commit crimes. And Jessica isn't an innocent victim. She's been spending the money she knew was stolen from your wife. She doesn't know. She knows, I interrupted firmly. Her Instagram is filled with pictures of items purchased with our credit cards. She's been documenting your fraud for months while planning to marry you. This is a family business, Marcus, and you're not the mastermind. You're the fall guy. The realization seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He sank back onto the sofa, his head in his hands. What have I done? You've destroyed our marriage, stolen nearly $250,000, committed identity theft and fraud, and potentially conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, I said matter-of-factly. But more than that, you've betrayed someone who loved you and trusted you completely. Claire, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but we can fix this. I can make this right. I'll break up with Jessica. I'll find a way to pay back the money. It's too late for that, I said, standing up from my chair. I've already contacted the police, frozen our accounts, and hired criminal defense attorneys. This isn't a marriage problem anymore, Marcus. This is a federal case. As if summoned by my words, a firm knock echoed from the front door. Marcus's head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. That would be Detective Martinez, I said calmly. She has some questions for you about your activities in Wisconsin and your relationship with the Williams family. The look of utter betrayal on Marcus's face might have moved me a week ago. Now it felt like justice finally arriving at our doorstep. Detective Martinez entered our living room with the calm authority of someone who had handled countless similar situations. Behind her stood 2 uniformed officers and a plainclothes detective I didn't recognize, their presence transforming our intimate confrontation into an official law enforcement operation. "Mr. Sullivan," Detective Martinez said formally, "I'm Detective Lisa Martinez with the Chicago Police Department Financial Crimes Division. I need you to come with us to answer some questions about financial irregularities involving multiple accounts and interstate fraud allegations." Marcus looked from me to the detective with an expression of complete disbelief. "Claire, you actually called the police? Over credit card debt? This is insane." "This isn't about debt, Mr. Sullivan," Detective Martinez corrected firmly. "This is about identity theft, forgery, insurance fraud, and conspiracy charges that cross state lines. We've obtained warrants for your arrest based on evidence of systematic financial crimes." As Detective Martinez read Marcus his rights, I watched the man I'd married for 6 years finally understand that his carefully constructed double life was collapsing completely. The charm and manipulation tactics that had worked so well in personal relationships were useless against criminal justice procedures. "Claire, please," Marcus said as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "You don't understand what you're doing. Jessica's family, they're not who you think they are. If you involve law enforcement, I'm not the only one who's going to get hurt." Detective Martinez paused, her attention sharpening. "What exactly does that mean, Mr. Sullivan? Are you suggesting there are additional victims, or that you've been threatened?" Marcus hesitated, clearly realizing he'd said too much. "I want a lawyer," he said finally. "Smart choice," Detective Martinez replied. "We'll be in touch about that lawyer soon enough. But first, we have some additional arrests to make in Milwaukee." After Marcus was led away in handcuffs, I found myself alone in our living room for the first time since discovering his betrayal. The house felt hollow, echoing with the absence of all the lies that had filled it for months. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt like a museum of a relationship that had never actually existed. Detective Martinez returned an hour later with updates that expanded the scope of the case far beyond what I'd imagined. "We've arrested Jessica Williams and her father Edward Williams in Milwaukee," she announced, settling onto the sofa where Marcus had sat just hours earlier. "The FBI raided their home and offices simultaneously. What we found suggests this operation has been targeting multiple victims across several states." I poured coffee for both of us, grateful for the mundane task that helped center my thoughts. "Multiple victims? At least 12 women that we've identified so far. Possibly more. The Williams family appears to have been running what we call a romance fraud ring, targeting successful women through relationships with men they recruit as accomplices. Your husband wasn't their first employee. The implications sent a chill through me. Marcus hadn't just betrayed our marriage for love or money. He'd been a hired criminal participating in a systematic scheme to defraud successful women. Our entire relationship might have been calculated from the beginning. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Based on financial records we seized, the Williams family has been operating this scheme for at least 5 years. Edward Williams owns several legitimate businesses in Milwaukee, but they appear to be fronts for the fraud operation. Jessica serves as the coordinator, identifying targets and managing the men who carry out the relationships. And Marcus? According to the evidence we've found so far, he's been working with them for approximately 8 months. The timeline suggests he was recruited specifically to target you after they identified Digital Fortress Solutions as a growing company with a successful female CEO. 8 months. I mentally calculated back to the beginning of the year, trying to remember when Marcus's behavior had started changing. The increased travel, the vague explanations about work, the pressure for me to take on more business trips, it all aligned with Detective Martinez's timeline. "There's something else," Detective Martinez continued. "When we searched the Williams property, we found detailed files on each target, including extensive research on your business, your personal finances, and your daily routines. They knew about your award ceremony 2 weeks before it was publicly announced. The violation felt even deeper knowing that strangers had been studying my life, planning how to exploit my success and trust. But underneath the horror, I felt a growing sense of vindication. Every instinct that had told me something was wrong, every moment of unease I'd dismissed as paranoia, had been accurate. "What happens now?" I asked. "The federal charges will be handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office since the crimes cross state lines. Your case is particularly strong because of the systematic documentation you gathered and the recorded conversation tonight. Marcus's confession, combined with the financial evidence, gives us everything we need for successful prosecution." After Detective Martinez left, I sat alone in the house that no longer felt like home, processing the enormity of what had been revealed. The man I'd married had been a criminal accomplice from almost the beginning of our relationship. My instincts about building independent financial security had literally saved my life and livelihood. I pulled out my black American Express card, running my thumb over the distinctive metal surface. Tomorrow I would need to start rebuilding everything Marcus had destroyed, but tonight I wanted to understand exactly what resources I had available for that reconstruction. I called the Centurion customer service line, speaking with a financial specialist who confirmed what I had hoped. The account connected to my black card had been growing substantially over the past 3 years. Between the automatic investment features and the business cashback rewards, my secret account now held $847,000, nearly $1 million that Marcus had never known existed. More importantly, the account included concierge services that could help me navigate the practical challenges ahead: finding temporary housing, securing new banking relationships, and even locating professional services for the legal and personal recovery process. "Ms. Sullivan," the specialist said after reviewing my account history, "given the unusual circumstances you've described, I'm activating our premium protection services. This includes identity monitoring, expedited replacement for any compromised accounts, and access to our private banking division for asset management during your transition period." The irony wasn't lost on me. While Marcus had been systematically destroying our shared financial life, my independent financial identity had been growing stronger and more secure. The safety net I'd built without his knowledge would now become the foundation for my new life without him. Tuesday morning brought a call from Jonathan Pierce with additional updates that painted an even broader picture of the Williams family's criminal enterprise. "The FBI has uncovered evidence that this operation extends back over a decade," he reported. "They've identified at least 30 victims across 8 states, with total losses exceeding $4 million. Your case represents one of their most sophisticated attempts because of your business success and the complexity of the fraud they attempted." "What about the other victims?" "Most were targeted through online dating or professional networking events. The Williams family would research successful women, then introduce them to men who would develop long-term relationships while systematically stealing their assets. Your situation was unique because Marcus was already married to you when they recruited him. This revelation reframed my entire marriage in a new light. Marcus and I had been together for 6 years, but according to the evidence, he'd been recruited by the Williams family only 8 months ago. That meant our first 5 years had been genuine, which somehow made the betrayal feel both better and worse." "There's more," Jonathan continued. "The Williams family has been using sophisticated identity theft techniques to access victims' accounts. The life insurance policy they arranged on you was apparently their standard final phase, collecting insurance payouts after staging accidents or suspicious deaths." The words hit me like ice water. I had been targeted not just for financial fraud but potentially for murder disguised as accidental death. The European vacation Marcus had been pushing, the pressure for me to travel more for business, the dangerous projects he'd encouraged me to consider. All of it might have been designed to create opportunities for accidents that would trigger the insurance payout. "Jonathan, I need to ask you something important," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "With everything that's been discovered, what are my legal options for asset recovery and protection going forward?" "Excellent question. First, all the fraudulent debt will be eliminated. The credit card companies and banks are treating these as criminal matters, not marital debt. Second, you're entitled to sue the Williams family for damages. and the federal asset forfeiture process will likely recover substantial amounts from their illegal proceeds. And my business? Completely protected. Since Digital Fortress Solutions was never compromised, and your business accounts remained separate, your company is actually in a stronger position than before. The award recognition, combined with the media attention from this case, will likely generate significant new business opportunities. After ending the call, I stood in the kitchen of my house, looking out at the yard Marcus and I had planted together last spring. The garden we'd designed as a symbol of our growing life together now felt like evidence of how thoroughly I'd been deceived. But underneath the sadness and betrayal, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For months, I'd sensed something was wrong without being able to identify it. I'd questioned my instincts, dismissed my concerns, and tried to rationalize away my growing unease. Now I knew that every suspicion had been justified. More importantly, I'd survived. Not just financially, but emotionally and physically. The woman who had trusted completely had emerged stronger, smarter, and more independent than she'd ever been before. The hidden fortune that had been my secret safety net would now become the foundation for whatever came next. Marcus had tried to steal my future, but he'd never understood that my real strength wasn't in our shared assets. It was in the business I'd built, the instincts I'd trusted, and the independence I'd maintained even within marriage. Tomorrow, I would start building a new life from the ashes of this betrayal. But tonight, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. 6 months after Marcus's arrest, I stood in the conference room of the federal courthouse in Chicago, watching as Judge Patricia Morrison delivered the final sentences in what the media had dubbed the romance fraud ring case. The mahogany-paneled room was packed with victims, their families, federal prosecutors, and journalists covering what had become one of the largest romance fraud prosecutions in recent history. Edward Williams, Judge Morrison announced, her voice carrying the weight of justice. You are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and racketeering. You orchestrated a criminal enterprise that destroyed the financial security and emotional well-being of dozens of innocent victims. Edward Williams, the man who had manipulated my husband into nearly destroying my life, showed no emotion as he was led away in handcuffs. Jessica Williams received 12 years for her role as the operations coordinator, her social media expertise having been crucial in identifying and researching targets across multiple states. Marcus's sentencing had taken place the previous week. 8 years in federal prison for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy charges. When he'd looked at me from the defendant's table during his allocation, I'd felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering attachment. The man I'd married had been replaced by a stranger who'd chosen crime over our marriage, and I'd already moved far beyond mourning that loss. The victims in this case demonstrated remarkable courage in coming forward, Judge Morrison continued, and their cooperation has prevented this criminal organization from harming additional innocent people. The court hopes that today's sentences provide some measure of closure and justice. After the hearing, I joined the other victims and their families in the courthouse lobby. Over the past months, we'd formed an unexpected support network, successful women from various industries who'd all been targeted for our independence and financial success. Dr. Rachel Chen, a surgeon from Minneapolis. Maria Rodriguez, who owned a chain of restaurants in Texas. Jennifer Park, a tech entrepreneur from Seattle. Our shared experience had created bonds that would last far beyond the legal proceedings. Lunch to celebrate? Suggested Rachel, whose case had involved nearly $400,000 in theft before she'd discovered her boyfriend's deception. I know a great place downtown that serves justice as a side dish. The dark humor that had helped us all survive this ordeal brought smiles to faces that had once been marked by betrayal and financial devastation. We'd each lost money, relationships, and trust, but we'd gained something valuable too: unshakable confidence in our own strength and instincts. During lunch at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Chicago River, I shared updates on the final asset recovery process. The federal forfeiture had recovered $3.2 million from the Williams family's various accounts and properties, which would be distributed among all victims proportionally. Combined with successful civil lawsuits and insurance recoveries, Most victims would recover 80 to 90% of their financial losses. "What about your business?" asked Maria, cutting into her salmon with the precise movements that had made her restaurants famous. "Last I heard, you'd signed some major contracts." I smiled, feeling genuine excitement for the first time in months. Digital Fortress Solutions has tripled in size since all this started. The media attention, ironically, brought us national recognition. We just signed a multi-million-dollar contract with a Fortune 500 company to overhaul their entire cybersecurity infrastructure. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Our victimization had ultimately strengthened our businesses and professional reputations. The publicity surrounding the case had positioned us as survivors who'd fought back effectively, which resonated with potential clients and partners who valued resilience and intelligence. "And personally?" Jennifer asked gently. "How are you doing with the emotional recovery?" I considered the question carefully. "Better than I expected, honestly. I spent a lot of energy being angry at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. But my therapist helped me understand that the deception was sophisticated and deliberate. Marcus and the Williams family were professional criminals, with years of experience manipulating intelligent, successful women. The therapy had been crucial for processing not just the betrayal but the revelation that my marriage had been targeted specifically because of my success. Dr. Sarah Kim, a specialist in financial abuse and fraud trauma, had helped me understand that my instincts and preparation, the separate finances, the business independence, the careful documentation, had been protective responses that saved my life and livelihood. "The hardest part," I continued, "was accepting that I'd been chosen as a victim because of my strengths, not despite them. But now I see that those same strengths are what allowed me to survive and rebuild." After lunch, I drove to my new penthouse apartment in the Gold Coast, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. I'd purchased it outright using funds from my secret account, finally making the decision to live somewhere that reflected my success rather than accommodating someone else's preferences. The apartment was modern and minimalist, decorated with artwork I'd chosen purely because it spoke to me. No compromises, no negotiations, no consideration of anyone else's taste. For the first time in my adult life, I lived in a space that was entirely my own. My home office showcased the growth of Digital Fortress Solutions, framed articles about our cybersecurity innovations, photos from industry conferences where I'd been featured as a keynote speaker, and the Crystal Award from that fateful night when Marcus had been maxing out our credit cards. The award now represented not just professional recognition, but the beginning of my liberation from a marriage built on lies. Sarah Chen called while I was reviewing proposals for our latest expansion, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Have you seen the tech news today? You made the cover of Cybersecurity Weekly as Executive of the Year. The article calls you a visionary leader who turned personal adversity into professional triumph." I pulled up the article on my computer, scanning the interview I'd given last month about building resilient businesses and maintaining independence in professional partnerships. The photo showed me in my office, confident and composed, with the Chicago skyline visible through the windows behind me. "There's more," Sarah continued. "David wants to know if you're interested in joining Titan Enterprises' board of directors. They're expanding their cybersecurity division and want your expertise guiding their strategic direction. A board position with Titan would represent the pinnacle of professional achievement in my field, the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed about when I'd first started Digital Fortress Solutions." "Tell him I'm very interested," I replied, already considering how the role would complement my company's growth strategy. That evening, I sat on my apartment's balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and orange. My phone showed dozens of congratulatory messages about the day's sentencing and the magazine cover, but I felt most peaceful in this quiet moment of solitude. The black American Express card lay on the table beside me, no longer a secret safety net, but a symbol of the independence I'd maintained, even when I'd thought I was building a shared life. The account it accessed had grown to over $1.2 million through careful investment and the success of my business, providing a foundation for whatever ambitious projects I chose to pursue next. I thought about Marcus, beginning his first night in federal prison, and felt only a distant sadness for the choices he'd made. The man I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago might have been real, but the man who'd betrayed me for money was someone I'd never truly known. The grief I'd experienced wasn't just for the end of our marriage, but but for discovering that much of it had been an illusion. But from that illusion's destruction, I'd built something authentic and strong. Digital Fortress Solutions now employed 43 people and had clients across North America. I owned a beautiful home that reflected my taste and values. I had genuine friendships with people who'd proven their loyalty during the darkest period of my life. And I had unshakable confidence in my ability to detect deception and protect myself from future exploitation. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. Saw the news about your magazine cover. Congratulations on everything you've built from this situation. You're an inspiration to every victim who wonders if they can recover from financial abuse. I typed back. Thank you for everything you did to bring them to justice. The other victims and I couldn't have gotten through this without your professionalism and support. As the stars appeared over Lake Michigan, I raised my wine glass in a private toast, not to survival, but to transformation. Marcus had tried to steal my future by maxing out my credit cards and liquidating our shared assets. What he'd never understood was that my real fortune had never been in those accounts. My fortune was in the business I'd built through talent and determination. It was in the instincts that had warned me something was wrong, and the preparation that had protected me from complete devastation. It was in the strength to document evidence, seek help, and fight for justice. And it was in the wisdom to maintain my independence, even within a marriage I'd believed was loving and secure. The woman who'd discovered fraudulent credit card charges 6 months ago had been devastated by betrayal, but ultimately saved by her own foresight. The woman sitting on this balcony tonight was stronger, wiser, and more successful than she'd ever imagined possible. Marcus had emptied our accounts, thinking he was securing his future while destroying mine. Instead, he'd freed me to discover just how powerful I could be when I stopped limiting myself for someone else's comfort. His betrayal had been my liberation, and his attempt to steal my fortune had revealed the unlimited potential I possessed. The black card in my wallet was no longer secret, and the fortune it accessed was no longer hidden. Everything I'd built, everything I'd achieved, everything I'd become, it was all mine, earned through my own efforts and protected by my own wisdom. And tomorrow I would continue building something even greater from the foundation of strength I'd discovered within myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.